Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So we left off in Kitab al-Nikah, in the Mutn Abi Shujaa, where we had been talking about nikah, and the first thing we talked about was some of the things about the people when they can get married and whatnot, and we also talked about the looking at a woman, the times when it's permissible, and also the last thing connected with that is whenever it's I don't remember if I mentioned it, but if there is a time where you're not allowed to look at a woman, so even more important than that would be like touching, no touching. And so like even if you're trying to touch with a hand like this, yes, the issue, it doesn't break your wudu. Yes, that's one issue. It won't break your wudu, but it's still haram. So like some people try to do the shaking your hands with a cloth or something, but no, it's still something. If you're not allowed to touch, I mean, if you're not allowed to look, then from Baba Awla, it's like it's even more understood that you're not allowed to touch. So the next thing he goes into is he's going to talk about the actual act of nikah. And nikah, the word nikah in the Shafi'i madhab, it is like this is a word in Arabic. It means two meanings. It has two meanings. One of the meanings is the actual act of nikah, or like the act of zawaj, and then the other meaning of nikah is jima'. So it holds both of these meanings. In the Shafi'i opinion, when they say nikah, and like normally the first thing it goes to is the act itself, not the jima'. And this is like its haqiqah in the act itself. So he's going to talk about the act itself. And the act, there's 5 arkan for the nikah. The first of them is the sigha, which is saying zawajtuka, like saying zawajtuka ibnati fulana. And then there's the qabul, which is the other part of the nikah, where he says qabiltu zawajika ibnatika fulana wa kadha. And so like when they have the sigha, and of course we'll talk a little bit about that, and this can be in any language, as long as it has the meaning that's clear. And then also the zawja, and of course the zawja we'll talk about a little bit about the conditions for her, and also the zawj. So these are the three of the 5 arkan, and then the wali, and then the 2 shahidain. So that's 5. And so like the 2 shahid, so these are the 5 arkan of nikah. And so he's going to talk about some of them. And when he says here, فَصْلٌ وَلَا يُصِحُّ عَقْدُ النِّكَاحِ إِلَّا بِوَلِيٍّ وَشَاهِدَيْ عَدْلٍ. So he says that nikah is not لا يصح. Here he means like, of course, if a rukn is missing, لا يصح. And so it's not necessarily a shart, it's a rukn that he's talking about. So he mentions here that لا يصح عقد النكاح إلا بولي. That's the first one. So you have to have a wali. And so this is, of course, from the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ says, لا نكاح إلا بولي وشاهدي عدل. And that so there's no nikah except with a wali and shahidei adlan, which is 2 trustworthy witnesses. And adala, it means that this person is not a fasiq, and that they don't do any of, so that means they don't do any of the kaba'ir, and also that they aren't persistent on any of the saghair, like in a nasty way and whatnot. And so these need to be, these are the shahidain. And of course this is apparently they need to be like adl in the apparent meaning. And also for the wali himself, he also needs to be adl as well. I believe he's gonna, so he mentions this in the next phrase here. He says, وَيَفْتَقِرُ الْوَلِي وَالشَّاهِدَانِ إِلَى سِتَّةِ شَرَائِطٍ. So he says there's 6 conditions for these 3 people. So like the wali and also the shahidan. So he says the first one, al-Islam. So of course they have to be Muslim, especially because this is a Muslim that is the one doing the act. So it needs to be Muslim. Of course this is for if it's a Muslimah that's getting married off. But if it's like a kitabiya, then one of their, her father, if he was a kitabi, then in this case he could do it. And there's no problem with that. But as far as if it's a Muslima, then it has to be a Muslim wali. Without that, because of course this is a general principle that anything that holds a type of power over someone else, such as like marriage, this is a type of power or something that is being done from one person to another. This is something that the mu'min is always, he's always going to be held higher, and he's never going to be put under the power of a kafir in this sense. So he's not going to be under their rule or like under their rule of that. So this is the condition for Muslima, that the person needs to be a Muslim. And so of course the modern day issue sometimes that happens, alhamdulillah we have this issue, is the amount of Muslimat that come into the deen and their family is kuffar. So in this case, unless one of their family members that is eligible to be a wali, unless he becomes a Muslim, then she's got to get someone else to be the wali for her. And of course, this can be any faqih that is knowledgeable in the bab of nikah, like a student of knowledge, talib al-ilm. If he's knowledgeable in the bab of nikah, he can become that wali for her, and she can use him as a wali to get married. But of course, it can't be it can't be her father that is doing that if he's not a Muslim. So in the second condition here is wathani al-bulugh, and so also the person needs to be baligh. This is for all three of these people. And so all three of these people need to be baligh, and which means that they're held accountable. And then the third thing is al-aql. And so of course, if someone's insane, of course they're not going to be able to be a wali, much less a shahid. And then the next thing is al-hurriya. And so of course this is something that goes against the essence of like a slave. A slave is busy with his duties and whatnot, so he's not going to be in a state where he is doing this big type of transaction, such as nikah, either giving a nikah or witnessing for that. And so this is he mentions here the hurriya and also the dhukuriya. And so this is also the view of the Shafi'i madhab, that all of these people need to be a male. And so of course, like for the wali, he needs to be male. No, and this also comes from the hadith, and that is تزوج المرأة المرأة ولا المرأة نفسها. And so from this hadith, that is sahih lighayrihi, as the scholars have said, but that the woman, she doesn't marry off another woman, and neither can she marry off herself. And so, of course, this is a clear hadith, and also for the sake of also from the Quran, al-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa. So of course, like the rijal are the ones that are supposed to be taking taking charge in this, and also of course this is not the role of a woman to be in this state. And of the part of the things, like for a wali in particular, the wali is supposed to look out and vet this guy that he's giving this lady in marriage to. So he needs to vet out this man to make sure he knows, is this man trustworthy? Is he upon his deen? Is he able to take care of her and whatnot? So normally a woman doesn't have they don't have the mindset of a man, or know what men are up to in the same way that a man would. So of course this is a job that is suitable for a man. This is of the wisdom, not necessarily the illah itself. And so this is the dhukuriya, and this comes for all three of these people mentioned. One for the wali especially, and then also for the shahidei adlan. And so this is also for the shahidain. And the Shafi'is, they'll talk about like a shahid, they'll talk about for mal, like for things that are maliya, like the different types of transactions that have to do with money. We can take two women in place of a man, but other than that, we don't. And so in here we stick with the shahidei adl. This is in the male form, so we only take these. They have to be male in this case. And so the next thing that he says here, the sixth of these conditions is adala, and adala is what al-Khatib al-Shirbini, he says, is وهي ملكة في النفس تمنع من اقتراف الذنوب. So this is an ability within that person's self to stop them from doing evil actions. وَلَوْ صَغَائِرَ الْخِسِّيَّةِ وَالرَّذَائِلِ الْمُبَاحَةِ. And so this even goes to the point of some of the smaller actions that are like, even if it's not a kaba'ir, it's still something that's unbefitting of an individual to do this. And like people, when they see it, it just turns them off. Like something that's very nasty. And occasionally maybe this, it depends on like the culture, but maybe this would be like the same thing as like if someone's like a chain smoker. Like this is something that's like a sagha'ir. And also if it's something that in the sight of people this drops their like status as a person, this is something that to look at, even if this wouldn't be considered of the kaba'ir. وَالرَّذَائِلِ الْمُبَاحَةِ. So like some things maybe it's okay for someone to do, like there's no There's nothing that is haram about it, except for the fact that it's something that makes people think that this person is like an idiot, or he just has no status in society. So this is like, this type of thing would also be something that would hurt the adala in this person. And so if there was, and like say there's a problem with someone who does a fasik, say someone who does something that's a serious sin and whatnot, what is the solution for him? He makes tawbah right away, and if he made tawbah, then his adala goes away, and he can his adala comes back from the fisq. So if he makes tawbah, then he can do it. But if he's still on that fisq and he hasn't made tawbah from it, then in this case he would be there. So that's kind of the way out for him. And of course, the apparent thing, like, we don't need to go check for adala. We don't need to go like check details and like fetish, like in every single person when they're in this case for like zawaj and whatnot. The apparent meaning of all of Muslims is that they are adl. The apparent meaning, unless any other evidence comes to us, everyone is adl until proven otherwise. And this is the normal thing. As long as they haven't had anything proved otherwise, then we take that as it is at the time of the act. And this is also, in general, a good principle for us to always have with our brothers and sisters. We always say, this person's adl until I come across something otherwise. To have that husna done. And this is the way that we would take it in this particular situation. As opposed to like, so this adl is dhahir. And like, we don't have to have someone come up and say, oh, he's adl. As opposed to if someone is doing a shahada with a qadi, in this case, someone would have to look into this person and make sure that he is actually adl. But here we would take it just apparent. It's apparent. We don't go that far. And so he says, إِلَّا أَنَّهُ يَقْتَقِرُ النِّكَاحُ الذِّمِّيَّ إِلَى إِسْلَامِ الْوَلِيِّ. And so لا يفتقر عفوا إلا أنه لا يفتقر نكاح الذمية إلى إسلام الولي. So he mentions here that the nikah for a dhimmiya, which is, this could be of a Jew or a Christian that is in the dhimmiya, that has that act between the Muslimin and whatnot, that in this case that she doesn't have to have that her wali be a Muslim, but he does have to be of her religion, or like he has to be a kitabi. And وَلَا نِكَاحُ الْأَمَةِ إِلَى عَدَالَةِ السَّيِّدِ. And so this is the other exception, that the amma, like this is the slave girl, she doesn't, of course her sayyid can do what he can marry her off and whatnot as he wishes, even if he doesn't necessarily have adala. That's not a shart for him, because the actual tasarruf that he's doing, like this actual transaction, has to do with milk, doesn't have to do with wilaya. Wilaya is different than milk. So like wilaya is having like authority over someone because of like a relationship between them, as opposed, and this needs adala and trust, as opposed to this is his property, so he can do what he wants with this property, even if this thing is messed up. That doesn't stop him from doing what he wants with this property. And did you have a question? All right. Any questions before we move on? Yeah.
The is that the meaning of honor, or
the mia?
Yeah.
The mia is a woman that has she's not a Muslimah.
Okay.
So this is a term that's used because the women are broken up into like she's either a Muslimah, or you could say kafira.
Yeah.
And then the kafira is broken into different categories. One of them is like a kitabiyah. And these are the ones that someone that either they're either a Christian or a Yahudi.
Yeah.
And then this is broken up into two different categories as well, which is either harbi, or which is someone that doesn't have any pact with the Muslims, no agreement with the Muslims, or a dhimmiyah, which is someone who has an agreement with the Muslims to be in their land. Okay. And this is the one that is being talked about. So it's more specific in this sense. And of course, like the kafira, as I mentioned, that it's not a kitabiyah, and then they would be a wathaniya. They call them wathaniya. Like anything other than that, or sometimes they say majusiyah. Yeah. But this is anything other than that. Like that doesn't have any type of kitab that they're following and whatnot. And of course, they will never have a dhimma. There's no dhimma for them. Like they can't make that act with the dhimma for them. And so so the last thing he said in here was, of course, the nikah. They don't have to have the sayyid, doesn't need adala to do the nikah for him. Also, as I mentioned for the sigha is something that would be said between the people just to finish up. This would be back and forth, and there shouldn't be a break between it. So when the one person says zawajtuka ibnati fulana, then this other person, he shouldn't just talk about something else and then come back and say qabiltu. And so this needs to be right after another. There shouldn't be any like big break between them. Of course, like a small break is not, there's nothing wrong with this. But of course, in general, the act of nikah is something that is mithaqan ghalidha. Like as Allah mentions it as mithaq ghalidh, which is like this is a pact which is very, very strong or like a big deal. And so, of course, this is something that we would go to more like stringent like details when it comes to what do we accept and what do we not. And so it needs to be very clear in that. So and also it's fine for it to be in a different language as long as it's clear what it means when someone says that. And if it's in Arabic, then it should be like it should have the meaning of inkah. Shukran, barakallahu feek. And also for the zawja, for the woman, this is the other rukun. She also needs to have a couple conditions. One of them is that it's permissible to marry her in general, like that she's not of the maharim, and also that she's like individual, like this is an actual woman that is specified, not one of my daughters, but it's an actual daughter. Yeah. And also that she's not married currently, and she's not in the iddah. So like these are all conditions for her to be married. And for the zawj, and similar to that is also that he's allowed to be married, like that he's not one of her maharim, and also that he is choosing, he's not forced. So that's ikhtiyar and ta'yin, and also that he is a specific person. And wa'ilm bihal al-mar'ati lahu. And so like that he knows who this woman is. Like he has a understanding that she is also allowed to be married to him. Like if he doesn't know and he doesn't have any clue, maybe she is or maybe not, then he needs to know that this is a woman that he can marry. And so the next chapter that we're going to go into is we're going to talk about the wulat, and this is the plural of awliya. So awliya or wulat is the wali. So we're going to talk about who are they and what is the order that they come in. And of course, this is of the, we talked about this at the beginning. Of course, he needs to be Muslim if it's a Muslima that is being married off. And we have to have him, but we're going to talk about which one comes first, and some of the order that they come in here. So he says here, Abu Shujaa, rahimahullah, he says, وَأَوْلَى الْوُلَاةِ الْأَبُ ثُمَّ الْجَدُّ أَبُو الْأَبِ ثُمَّ الْأَخُ لِلْأَبِ وَالْأُمِّ ثُمَّ الْأَخُ لِلْأَبِ ثم ابن الأخي للأب والأم ثم ابن الأخي للأب ثم العم ثم ابنه على هذا الترتيب. And so here he talks about, he says the first one is the ab, the father, and then the jad, abul ab. And so like the jad that is from the father's side. All of this is connected to the father itself. And so like this is not the jad from the woman's side, not from her mother's side, because the asl is the father. And so then it would go from this, it would go from the father himself, it would go up the line, okay, then the jad. And this can, even if it's all the way up the line, so it's like her great-great-grandfather. Okay, no problem. All of this could work. Of course, but the ab is the first one line, then the jad, the one that is the father of the ab. And then also, then it would be the akh, then her brother, and that is a full-blooded brother. That's a lil abi wal a shaqiq. And so this is the full-blooded brother. And then also the one for the ab. Because the full-blooded brother gets first because he has two ways of connection to her, as opposed to the one that is a half-blooded brother to the father. In this sense, he has one connection, and so the one that has two is stronger than the one that has one. So he comes. So the full-blooded brother comes first, but you'll see he doesn't mention here the brother for the mother. The brother from another mother, he doesn't mention this. And so and then he mentions here ثم ابن الأخي للأب. And so this is the son of the brother that is from للأب والأم. That is the full-blooded brother's son. So this would be her nephew, right? Yeah, that'd be her nephew from her brother that's a full-blooded brother. And ثم ابن الأخي للأب. Then the half-blooded nephew from her half-blooded brother from the father's side. All right. ثم العم. And of course, the am is different than the khal. So this is an uncle from the father's side. And so then he's like this, and then his son. And all of this in the same order, how we break that down. His son in the same order. And this is what we'd call asabat. And as we talked about in the mirath, we talked about these people are the ones that would inherit, as opposed to like from the mother's side. You know, these are the asabat, is what they'll call these, because they're all, the male side is the connection, how they connect to this individual. And so this is the order too of what they would go. We'd have one, then the next, when it comes to the order of who is the one who has the right to marry her off, in this case. And also, of course, as we mentioned before, I didn't touch on it, but it is a modern day issue. And the adala that I mentioned there for the wali, the adala, if the wali stops his daughter from getting married multiple times to someone who is a suitable match for her, multiple times for someone who is a suitable match for her, which is a kuf. In this case, this drops his adala. That means he is no longer able to marry her, and that it goes to the next person in line. So occasionally there are men that stop their daughters from getting married, and there's no reason for them. The person that is a suitable match for this person, and in this case, he has no right to stop her. The first time, he's given grace. Like if he stops her once, maybe he thinks that there's someone else in line that's going to be better than this one. Even though he's a kuf, he just doesn't feel right about it. Okay, this is one. But if he does it multiple times, then in this case it would drop his adala. And so it's his, and it's also his responsibility, the father's responsibility to find a wife for his daughters. This is his responsibility. He can't be leaving his daughters growing old under his care while he doesn't go out there and find them a wife. So this is his responsibility. And so here the next thing he says, فَإِذَا عُلِمَتِ الْعَصَبَاتُ فَالْمَوْلَى الْمُعْتِقُ ثُمَّ عَصَبَاتُ. And so if we don't have any of these asabat, this is the name of these people from the ab. If you remember this, all of these are called asabat. So if we don't have any of these asabat, then the next person that comes in line, al-mawla al-mu'tiq. So the mawla has a bunch of different meanings, but the one here is, he says it afterwards, al-mu'tiq. So mawla here is the one who frees this slave. So this was once a slave. I say so this was a slave girl, and she doesn't have anyone else to marry her off. And so in this case, the person who freed her, this man, would be the one that could marry her off. Thumma asabatu. And so and then if he's not around, then the people, the asabat, just the same order that we just mentioned there, from awla al-wulat, from ab, then his father, and his all the way down that same line. ثم عصباته, that who goes back to al-mawla al-mu'tiq. ثم الحاكم. And of course, if we don't have any of these, then it goes to the hakim. And the hakim is the one, and this comes also from the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ says that the sultanu wali man la waliya lah. So a sultan, or like the hakim, is the one he's the wali of the person who doesn't have a wali around. So if someone wants to get married, we can't stop this person from getting married just because their wali is not available. So if there's a kuf and there's an opportunity for this, in this case, and like the father is unavailable, we can't contact him and get his permission and whatnot. This is a once in a lifetime chance and whatnot. So we can't stop this person from getting married. So we would have the hakim do this for it. And then we don't even look to all the order of all of these other people. If the original one is there in essence, and he's not available, then the hakim would be the one that would take this. And of course, this is in the land of the Muslims, we'd have a hakim, which is like a qadi, like a judge, appointed judge. But in a place where there's no shariah appointed court, then this would go to like a faqih that knows nikah. As I mentioned before, for the talib al-ilm can be of this port. He can be muhakkam ilayh. And so someone can use him as a hakim and go to him and bring their amr to him, and then he would be the wali for this person. And so then the next thing he mentions here, he says, وَيَجُوزُ وَلَا يَجُوزُ أَن يُصَرِّحَ بِخِطْبَةِ مُعْتَدَّةٍ. So here there's a khitbah. The khitbah is basically showing that you're interested in marriage for this person. And the khitbah there's two different sides to it. One side of it is that this person, like the male side, goes out and he talks and he shows that I'm interested in marriage for this. And then there's the other side of the khitbah, which is she is also interested in the marriage that this person has. They're both interested in this khitbah. And so this type, we'll talk about, this is a stronger type than if the man is showed interest And if the man only showed interest and she hasn't given a reply about this, or like her wali hasn't given a reply about this, then this is one case. And if they have given a reply about this, then this is another case. We'll talk about this inshallah. But here, regardless of the case here, the khitbah it's not permissible for someone to do tasrih and yusarrih, which is to say something that only means zawaj. Like that you're interested in marriage for this person. If you say something like, I think you're beautiful, or as a guy would be very lucky to have you as his wife. A guy. Not I would be very lucky, but a guy. So something that has this other meaning. This is something that in certain circumstances, of course not if she's in iddah raj'iyya. We'll talk about this. There's a iddah where she's not going back to her husband. Like there's no going back. And then there's a iddah raj'iyya where the husband at any time can say, come back. At this point, none of this. But if it's the iddah that's not raj'iyya, in this case, there's a different, he'll mention this, yajuz and yu'arrad binikahiha. So like if he were to say something such as like an innuendo, you'd say kinaya, or something of this sort, as long as he doesn't say it outright, in this case, it's permissible. But if it's raj'iyya, then it's not permissible in any case to say this or that. And so he says here, وَيَجُوز, the next thing he'll talk about here is وَيَجُوزُ أَن يُعَرِّضَ بِنِكَاحِهَا أَن قَبْلَ انْقِضَاءِ الْعِدَّةِ. And ta'rid is something that's innuendo, like to show, like someone would be happy to have you as a wife. I'm sure you would be a good wife, or something that holds as another meaning other than nikah. So if it's clear in nikah and doesn't hold any other meaning other than this person wants to marry her, in this case this is tasrih. If it holds it could mean this or it could mean that, this would be ta'rid. Alright? And this goes back to the ayah where Allah says, وَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا عَرَّضْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْ خِطْبَةِ النِّسَاءِ. And so, and this is the ta'rid, which isn't something that is sarih, but it's ta'rid, which is something that is innuendo. And the nisa here is, of course, this is for the nisa that are not raj'iyah. If they're raj'iyah, then no. Because of course they have a husband that is still like the alaka of marriage hasn't been completely separated yet. Until her iddah finishes, the alaka is the same. So if he told her to come back anytime, there's no new act, there's no nothing. As opposed to if her iddah has ended, or like as if she was like divorced for the third time from him. In this case, that would be different. Or like her husband passed away. In this case, you could do ta'rid to the woman that was on her iddah, waiting for that iddah to pass. So, but not tasrih, and that's what he mentioned at the beginning. And we'll talk about the iddah in more detail, inshallah, in the future, in the different types. But some of this will come up, and occasionally the end of the book will explain the beginning of the book. So occasionally the first time you go through things, some things you'll have like 20 things that come at you at once. But if you go and review after we studied the end of the chapter, or like the end of the Kitab al-Nikah, when you look back at it, it'll make more sense. Of course, once you finish the book and review, it'll make more sense than when you were first going through it with the sharh. Of course, that's the same with all of the ilm in the first time going through. So he mentions here the next one, Abu Shujaa, he says, Rahimahullah, وَالنِّسَاءُ عَلَى ضَرْبَيْنِ بِكْرٌ وَثَيِّبٌ. And so he says, of course, like the women are two types: a bikr, which is someone who has their bakara, which is like the hymen. The hymen hasn't been broken, and then the thayyib, which the hymen has been broken. And of course, this is the way the Shafi'is, they will look at it. They look at it as in the hymen itself. This is what's called the bakara. The bakara is the hymen itself. Is it broken or not broken? But in reality of like the actual rulings, the rulings most of the time actually go back, did she have intercourse or not? Like intercourse in actual actual intercourse, and this is what it actually goes back to. But occasionally you'll find that in the shuruh and whatnot, what they mean by bikr is the bakara is still intact, and if the bakara has been broken, then it's tayyib, even if it's not with intercourse. And so this is a little different than what we consider a virgin. But when it comes to the actual rulings that are entailed, the tayyib is a non-virgin, and the bikr is a virgin. As we consider it, and Allah knows best with all the details and whatnot. But this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab. And so he says that they're either bikr or thayyib. Now he's going to talk about the differences when it comes to ahkam between them. He says, فَالْبِكْرُ يَجُوزُ لِلْأَبِ وَالْجَدِّ إِجْبَارُهَا عَلَى النِّكَاحِ. And so he says, like, for the bikr, which is someone who has never been married before. In this case, it's okay for the ab and the jad, so like for her father or her grandfather. He says, إِجْبَارُهَا, which means that he can marry them off without asking them permission. He can just, he can do it. And of course there's conditions for this, but this is something that can be done by them, and so he doesn't have to ask them permission. Of course it's still mustahab for him to ask their permission, and if this is something that is good. But this is something, because normally the father is the one that has the most love for his daughter, like out of anyone. So this like harming of his daughter is not something that normally would come about. And like from the natural state of being, he's not someone who normally would harm his daughter. And the same thing with the jad, like that. Both of these, as opposed to this only goes. Remember we talked about all the other awliya from the asabat. These don't apply for this. It only could be the father or the jad. These are the only two that could marry them without like asking their permission and getting that. The other ones, they would have to be consulted. Of course, someone who hasn't reached bulugh yet, their word is not taken into any consideration. And so here he says here, so the bikr yajuz lil ab wal jad ijbaruha ala nikah. And of course, there's a couple conditions for this. I'll mention these conditions because it's important for people to understand. And of these conditions is that there's no adawa, that is a clear adawa, or like anger between the woman and the wali. And the same thing, or that there's no clear anger between, or like enmity between her and the person that she's going to get married to. Also, that the person that he marries her to is someone who is a suitable match. That's also another of the conditions, as well as that she's married at the same mahr. The mahr is the mahr al-mithl, because we'll talk about mahr. But this needs to be someone like her would be married with this mahr. It needs to be the same amount. And so he can't change this if he's going to do it without her consultation. And also that it's min naqdil balad, and so it also needs to be from the currency of the place that they're at for the mahr. And also that the zawj himself, he's someone who has the money for it now. He's not mu'sir. He's not like a guy that can't pay. He has to be able to pay it for at that time. He can't be mu'sir, which means that he doesn't have the money to pay for the mahr at that time. And also that he doesn't marry her off to a person that she would be harmed by living with him. So if she's going to be harmed by living with him, such as someone who's like say someone is blind, and that's going to be very hard on her to live with someone who's blind, because there's going to be a lot of extra hardships that go along with this. Or someone who's a old man, like elderly and feeble and whatnot. It's gonna be hard for her from multiple aspects. So of course, then it would not be permissible for him to do this. And also that there's other ones, such as like that if she had to do hajj, and this is going to stop her from doing hajj, and hajj has already been made obligatory on her. In this case, she would need to do hajj first. And the last couple of these conditions, like the last few conditions, they aren't conditions to the validity of the marriage. The first ones that I mentioned are conditions to the validity of the marriage, and the last ones are conditions for the permissibility. So and so this is, and there's a slight difference between these. So like the person would be athim, and some of the conditions that are for the permissibility, the person, he would do it, he would be athim for doing it, but the actual act goes through. But if you say he married her with someone who wasn't a kuf, or is not a suitable match, or that there's enmity between her and her wali, in this case it wouldn't even be sahih, like the act itself. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And of course, sometimes the enemies of Islam, they look at just that one jumla, and they say, oh, okay, you force your women to get married, blah 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 blah. And of course, there's actually conditions for this. If you look at the conditions, it's not as they want to throw it up out there. And also, of course, if there is an issue, all of like this issue in particular is something that's built upon the mutual love and care from the father for her daughter. If this care, or like him looking out for his daughter, is no longer there, then he can't do this. Like, this is the reason that he's able to do this, is because there's this mawadda, and there's this love and this care and looking out for that. But if he's just trying to profit from her, and there's none, and no longer is there that that shafaqa, or like this looking out for his daughter in this case, then this was the only reason that it was available, that it was allowed from the first place. So he would not be allowed to do that in that case. So it's important to realize that. And of course, some of the cultures have gone far out into the side where they're just selling daughters, and they have no care for that. And this is, of course, haram. And according to some of them, it wouldn't even be allowed. Of course, a lot of the conditions aren't even met for the act to be valid. Allah Ta'ala alam. So, and so of course, then he says here, as far as the tayyib, and also thaba, thaba is the word that means raja, means it went back. So like thaba is something that went back from, it went out and then it came back. And so of course, like a tayyib is someone who was married and then they came back. And so it came back after that. And so a tayyib لا يجوز تزويجها إلا بعد بلوغها وإذنها. So the tayyib, she can't be married except after she has become mature, like the bulugh. And this is because of the next part, which is وإذنها. She has to give her permission, and we don't take the permission of children. Like a children's word has no say. And so this is something like in the Shafi'is, they will never take a kid's word for what he has to say. A kid is not a testimony. He can't speak for himself. He can't make iqrar for himself. He can't testify against himself on these things, and it's not going to be accepted in a court of law if he's a kid. And so this is one of the situations where, say someone married off their daughter. Okay, and then she came back after talaq. And this is before she even came into bulugh. This is all the problem, other problem. But say she came back. He can't marry her off until she comes to bulugh again. And until she is baligh, then she can actually give her idhn, because as a tayyib, she has to give her idhn. How can she give her idhn if she hasn't come of age yet? Or like if she hasn't reached puberty. So in this case, she would have to reach puberty before her idhn would be even acceptable. Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, how can she get married before, when a tayyib is someone that got married, so, and one of the shurut is bulugh?
Yeah, she was a bikr when she got married before.
She was a bikr, yeah? Yeah,
she was a bikr. She got married before to, so like this is al-iftirad, like on a scenario that she got married before to someone, say all the conditions were met for her to get married, and then things went south. She got divorced, and she's no longer a bikr. So she gets returned, and now she's tayyib, and she hasn't reached bulugh yet.
So she got married before, as a bikr, before she was a bulugh.
Yeah. And then, of course, like this is not, like, of course, someone should wait until they can, like this is haram for someone to like enter on a woman until she has reached the age where she can handle it. And so, but this, of course, like the books of fiqh, they will bring up scenarios that aren't necessarily allowed, but because you have to talk about the ruling there. Yeah, if that makes sense. And so the next thing is going to go into a fasl. Are there any questions before we move on? All right. And so he says here a fasl, and he's going to talk about the different muharramat of nisa, like the women that were not allowed to marry, the mahram. So this is important for people to pay attention. Of course, this is a bab that makes things easy and makes things hard at the same time. When it makes things easy, if they're mahram, it makes it easy because you can be with them, you know, and you can run around with them and whatnot, or help them out and stuff. And then also, if you're trying to marry this person, you should know that if they're mahram or not. All right. And of course, the best way for someone to do this is memorize the ayah. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ وَبَنَاتُكُمْ. And to the end of this, you memorize this ayat. This is most of it, and there's a couple ones that are alongside of this, but this is the basic principle. So he's going to bring it up, and he brings it up according to the muharramat. He'll bring the maharim up according to like the tartib of the ayah, like according to the same order. And of course, there's two different types of tahrim for a person to marry someone. One of the tahrim is mu'abbad. And this mu'abbad is forever, eternally, mahram, such as like your mother. It's all the way forever, or like a sister and whatnot, or say the mother of your wife, yeah, your mother of your wife, forever, and she is mahram. She's mahram. And so this is of the type that is eternal. And then there's some that is غير مؤبد. So like the sister of your wife. You're not allowed to marry her because you're not allowed to join between two. But if something were to happen, either she passed away or something, or you divorced her or something of that sort, then in this case, the sister is available. So this is not a mahram, and this is, of course, someone should understand, of course, just because you're not allowed to marry her doesn't mean you can be with her. And of course this is a dangerous situation for sisters and whatnot. They should never be around their sister's husband, And so here also there's a couple reasons that someone is going to be from the muharramat. Of the reasons, one is from nasab. And this is from like a lineage and whatnot, from like the bloodline itself. And then another one is by marriage. So once you get married, there's certain aspects that come in. And the other one is rada'ah. And this is rada'ah is of the other types when someone has, of course, breastfeeding. This also creates a similar, just like nasab, it creates a similar hurma, like nasab, and also mula'ana. That also, like if someone did mula'ana on a woman, never allowed to marry her again. And they have to be separated forever. What's that? Mula'ana, which is when someone says his wife cheated on him. And so this is qazf. And for him not to take the ruling of qazf, we'll talk about this, it comes at the end of the abwab and nikah. But this is a way of separation. So for him to get rid of the punishment on him, then he has to bear witness 5 times, yashhad 5 times, that he's sadiq, that he's speaking the truth. And then the last one, that la'natullahi alayhi in kana min al-kadhibin. So like if he was lying, then he bears witness on himself that the la'na of Allah will be upon him if he was lying. And so this takes like the similar ruling as like the 4 witnesses. Like you would have 4 witnesses that come up and bear witness on someone that they did this. But if he does this and she does the opposite, that I wasn't this way, and she has this وَأَنَّ غَضَبَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهَا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. So in this case, they're both of them. No one's getting stoned. Like she stopped them, and he's not getting whipped for qazf. And so they're separated forever, ever. So this is one type of tahrim mu'abbad, but this doesn't mean that they can hang out with each other ever. That's a different type. But this is the last thing that would make someone muharram. So he mentions here وَمُحَرَّمَاتُ بِالنَّصِّ, and he means from the Quran, is أربع عشرة. And so he says here that there's 14. And seven bin nasab. So this is the first one that we mentioned here, nasab, which is like from the actual line, which he mentioned ummahatukum wa banatukum. And so he says also wa in alat. So also covers all the jaddat that go up, like all the grandmothers. All the grandmothers going up, all of these are muharrama. As well. So ummahatukum, and so that's all the way, and all of the jaddat. And then also the next one, wa banatukum wal bintu wa in safarat. So banatukum, that includes your daughter and all of her daughters, or all of your son's daughters, or any of your offspring. Anything going down is all muharram. And so there's one way that you can kind of remember this, that they'll talk about it. There's 2 ways to figure out who is the ma yahrum bin nasab wal rad'a, and there's one of them is tahrum nisa'ul qaraba illa man dakhalat tahta walad al-umuma aw walad al-khu'ula. So this means anyone, this is a big principle, and it's in Khatib al-Shirbini, it'll come up in other books as well. But this is basically any woman, the women that they become haram with qaraba, like a line of nasab from you to them, except whoever comes under the walid of umuma, which is like any of your, or khu'ula, so any of your aunts, or your uncles, any of their kids, those are the only ones that are allowed for you. Anyone, if they come under this line, then they're allowed for you. But anyone other than that, from the women that are related to you, they're all maharam. So that goes all the way up the line, all the way down the line, and out to the side, to so you have your brothers and sisters, and you have all of their kids, and all of their kids. All of this is maharam. But if you go out to your you go to your ammet, go out them, and then their kids, like they're all going to be muharram. Even like your father's she's going to be from the maharim. But any of their kids, awal is going to be allowed. And of the other dabit that they will give is yahrum ala rajuli usuluhu. So that's anyone that comes from that he comes from. Anyone that he comes from, which encompasses all of his mother's, grandmother's, any side. Usuluhu wa fusuluhu. Fusul, anyone that comes from him. Wa fusuluhu. So that's the other one. Wa fusulu awwali usuli. And so also fusul awwali usuli. This is talking about the ammat. And so it's kind of a tongue twister here. But the fusul is anyone who's a descendant of awwal usuli. Wa fusul awwal usuli. So the first, and so there's like fusul awul usul. So the first, like all the aunts from any of the sides, then they're of the maharam. Wa awlu faslin min kulli aslin. And awul fasl min kulli aslin. And this is another. It kind of rhymes a bit, but this is basically the awul fasl min kulli asl. So every asl, which is like you would have a father or a jad or an abu jad or a jaddihi. And so all of these people, the first one that comes out from them, like their kids, that one is haram. And that's the awul fasl min kulli asl. And so ba'd al-asl al-ula, al-awwal. And so this is of the other ways that they put together all of the people. If they don't come into this line, then there would be the people that come in here, they would be muharram, and if they're not in here, then they're permissible. And of course, with another thing such as rida, this is the other one that we'll talk about. Of course, anything that from the rida also becomes haram. So he says here, going back to what the Mutn of Shujaa. So he talks about, and we talked about the ummahatukum wa banatukum, and this goes all the way down the line. Wa ukht wa akhawatukum, and so this is also the all of the sisters, and this is sister in any way, shape, or form. What I mean by any way, shape, or form, that she's your sister. That means that she shares a father with you or a mother. So a stepsister, does she share a father with you?
Yeah.
Does she a stepsister?
No.
Does she share a mother with you?
No. Half sisters?
Yes.
Half sisters are haram.
Yeah.
Stepsisters are not.
Yeah.
Alright?
Okay.
Alright. She doesn't share a father with you, and she doesn't share a mother with you.
Okay.
So this is something. So your sister's brother, or I'm going to say your brother's sister, your half brother's sister, could be marriageable.
Mm.
Yeah. So I throw that one out there because also there's other ahkam that come along with this, that you can't be alone with her, and she also has to wear hijab around. So there's other rulings that come alongside of this. Of course, between her and the husband, then in this case, this is as soon as they become, we'll talk about this, but she would become, she's called a stepdaughter. After he enters on the mother and consummates the marriage, then she becomes haram forever. All right, and so it comes up here. But this is the stepsister. The stepsister is not muharram. She's not mahram because she doesn't share a mother or a father with this person. All right, and so he says wal ukht wal khala, and also the khala. This is the awal. This is the awal fasl min kulli asl. And so, or this would be the fusul of the usul. And so like this is the fasl of the asl. So like the khala and the amma. And he did the opposite of tartib of the ayah. he did the opposite, like the ammatukum, wa khalatukum. This would be the opposite way. But yeah, of course, the aunts from any side, from the father's side or the mother's side. Wa bintul akhi, and so also the bintul akhi is also, this is the nephew. So all the nephews are haram on each other, and because all the way down, like they're connected. So this is all of the sisters, they're haram. The sisters haram, and also the brothers' daughters are haram, all the way down. Wa bintul ukht. So this is the bintul akh. That's the brother's daughter, and then the bintul ukht, which is the daughter, the sister's daughter, and that goes all the way down as well. Wathnani and bir rada'a. And so, and also there's two that become haram with rada'a. And these are the al-murdi'ah. So the so if someone, we'll talk about this inshallah, but the al-murdi'ah, and this is ummahatukum min al-rada'a. So this is what comes in the ayah. So if you have a woman that breastfed you five times, that would normally be considered one time, like changing from one to the other, like from one breast to the other is not, that all is one time. But if there's 5 separate occasions that she breastfed, then in this case she becomes your mother. And so, and she is, since she's your mother, then she is of the maharim and whatnot. Of course, she doesn't get the mirath and whatnot. But in this case, she is of the maharim. And so, this is the al-murdi'ah wa ukht min al-rada'a. So also all of the women that she birthed, are also your sisters from rada'a. Also any of the other women that she also nursed. Yeah. All of those are the same.
Even though it's not in the same time.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what time it is. Any time it is that comes from the same woman, that's your sister. All right. Yeah, there's strange scenarios that they'll occasionally will come up with. Yeah. One is like if a woman breastfeeds the man's wife. So a woman breastfeeds her husband's wife that's a baby. So he got married. And then he married young. Yeah. Okay, and and his wife is a baby. And this woman breastfeeds that breaks up the whole marriage, both of them. Bad scenario. Yeah, don't do it, guys. Bad consequences. All right. So yeah. So this is rada'a, and of course the essence for rada'a comes from of course from the ayah wa ummahatukum allati arda'nakum wa akhawatukum min ar-rada'a. So this is from the ayah that talks about these. Also, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said a big one sentence that has huge meanings. يحرم من الرضاع ما يحرم من الولادة أو من النسب أو كما قال. And so, like, this is anything that like the things that would be yahrum from wilada, like from like the birth and whatnot. This is the same thing. It would also create the hurma from rada, like that, from the people that come down. Of course, say your brother was breastfed by this woman. Okay, say your little brother, and then this woman, you want to marry her. Any problem with that?
If your
brother was breastfed by this woman, and you want to marry her. Any problem with that?
No, I don't think so.
No problem. Yeah. That's for him. That's his problem. That's his problem. Yeah. But yeah, so, and it's important. Of course, there'll be lots of scenarios that will come up in like the bigger books. I'm not going to go too deep into it. I'll just give you a couple quiz questions to see if you got the point. But this is of the trickiest masail out there when they come up with all the different scenarios. Just keeping up with them. And then the last part, which is, he says, وَأَرْبَعٌ bil musahara. Musahara is like in-laws, by marriage. Like, it's like by, like you would say, like marriage or like in-laws. وَهِيَ, and he talks about who are these four. He says, وَهِيَ أُمُّ الزَّوْجَةِ. So zawja, as soon as the person does the act of zawaj, as soon as the act is done, that woman becomes mahram forever. Even if he didn't come and do anything, like even if he never consummated the marriage, maybe he, after a while, he said, no, you know. But once he does the act on the woman, then at this point, once the act is done, then this woman becomes mahram forever. And this makes things easier, of course, like because traditionally, like the man has to deal with his mother-in-law a lot to do the stuff for zawaj and also to deal with his wife and all these things. So of course, making her of the maharim, this is easy. It makes things a lot easier. And also this goes all the way up, like the zawja, like so her all of her jaddat, like all of the way up, all the way up. Her ummahat, all of her ummahats are all of these. So her jaddat and whatnot. And so then also he says here, وَالرَّبِيبَةُ إِذَا دَخَلَ بِالْأُمِّ. So the Rabiba is like the opposite of the zawja. This is her bint, so the stepdaughter. Rabiba is called stepdaughter because he's the one who yurabbi. And so because he's not her father, but she is like reared by him because she's in the same household. And so she's called Rabiba. And so this is the stepdaughter. If he has if he has consummated he said إِذَا دَخَلَ بِالْأُمِّ. So if he consummated the marriage with the mother, in this case she becomes haram mu'abbada. And so she would be of the muharramat. And so this is, of course, if he didn't enter upon the mother, say something happened and he didn't consummate the marriage, and then he did talaq or whatever, he's still allowed to marry the stepdaughter, no problem. But there's a basic principle as well, like the man will never know a woman and his mother.
We'll never know his.
He'll never have relations with a woman and her mother. Never will this happen in a man's lifetime. And the same, and like this goes for a woman and her daughter. Same thing. It's like this will never be allowed. It's never allowed for a man to have relations with the mother and the daughter. So.
Like, you mean if let's say the daughter passed away, right? He married the daughter then passed away, right? For example, if she had a sister, he can marry the sister, right? But can that man marry the mother?
Think about it one more time. Say it one more time.
So let's say you say the man can never have a relation
with a mother and her daughter.
Yeah. So what if that daughter passed away, and he's interested in marrying
her mother? And never. She's the mother-in-law at this point. If he married the daughter, as soon as the act happened, she's the mother-in-law. As soon as the act happens, regardless of whether he consummates the marriage, she's haram. All right.
But he can marry the daughter if he didn't do something with the mother.
Yeah.
So basically he can have a relationship with both.
He can't have the intercourse with both.
So he can marry both, but not intercourse with both.
He can marry down if he got rid of the older one.
Yeah.
But he can't marry up, ever.
Yeah.
And he can't have intercourse with going any other ways. Yeah. This will never be legal for him. And the same thing with a man. A man can never have intercourse with his sons or any of his grandsons' wives.
Yeah.
All right. That's another وَحَلَائِلُ أَبْنَائِكُمْ. And so like all of the wives of anyone's sons, never is he allowed to have this. And also the same thing, the son can never have a wife that his father has known, or like that has had intercourse with. He can never have that. So these are certain boundaries that are clear that will never be set up. So if something happens by accident, say there was mistakes, they talk about like azina bi shubha, like someone got mixed up with someone else and it was dark and no one knew what happened. This creates very bad consequences, because once that's established, if say this was a father, like a father with his son's wife, that breaks up the whole marriage. The marriage has to be, no longer can it go on. Yeah.
with the son?
Yeah, say the father accidentally had sex with the son's wife. This breaks up the whole marriage.
For the son.
For the son. Yeah. So yeah, there's certain lines that will never be crossed, and if these lines are crossed, then everything stops. Yeah. So these are some of them. He mentions these here, and I don't know if all of these other ones that I mentioned here are going to come up, but he says here وَزَوْجُ الْأَبِي. This is the زَوْجَةُ الْأَبِي. So like also the wife of the father, and even bigger than the wife of the father, anyone that his father has known, like sexually. Any intercourse that's happened with any of the women from his father, he's never allowed to marry them. Yeah. And of course, there's other tafasil I won't necessarily go into it because it gets long and drawn out. But of course, like if there's zina's a different thing, because zina's not taken into consideration. But and also he says here وَزَوْجَةُ الْإِبْنِ, and so also the wife of the son, and this also goes grandsons and all the way down. So any of the wives of the son, he's never allowed to marry them. And also, the son is never allowed to marry any of the wives of his fathers. Yeah. And this is like fitriya. This is no. Like some of these things, and this is also another concept that you will find in the shariah, is the things that are very strong in the fitrah, the text is very weak in. The text will just come with the smallest of amount of text. You'll find maybe a text here, like an ayah will point to it. Or maybe there's no ayah whatsoever. But the fitrah is so strong in that this is hurma, you'll have ijma' on it. Mm-hmm. And there doesn't need to be any other like strong text. But the things that there's a strong da'i for someone to do, this is where you'll have a whole host of text about it. Mm-hmm. Such as like khuruj al-a'imma. Mm-hmm. You'll have like so many different texts that talk about don't do this, because there's a da'i, there's something that points people to want to do this, to revolt. So you'll have a whole lot of texts that come up in the opposition to fix this balance. But of course, you won't find a whole lot of texts talking about don't marry your mothers, don't marry your like stepmoms. You won't have these texts because it's just fitriya, and it's not. You have just one that points to it, and that's enough. Yeah. And so then also he mentions here, so these are the ones that are by musahara, which is by the in-laws, that is made haram by the in-laws. And he also mentions here, وَوَاحِدَةٌ مِنْ جِهَةِ الْجَمْعِ, and there's one that is by putting them together, like مِنْ جِهَةِ الْجَمْعِ, like you can't do it both at once, which is the ukht al-zawja. She's haram as long as you're married to her ukht, or like her sister. So the sister of your wife is haram as long as you're married to her. And this goes down to the slave girls and whatnot, same things. If you had two slave girl sisters, you can't have both of them at the same time. It's one or the other. So you have to have one that's haram and then the other one. But this is the same thing with all of, you can never like combine the sisters at the same time. There always has to be a break between them. And he also says here, وَلَا يُجْمَعُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْأَةِ وَعَمَّتِهَا وَلَا خَالَتِهَا. And so also the other one that is never put together is the amma, which is like the paternal aunt, and also the maternal aunt for the wife. Her maternal aunt and paternal aunt, they can't be combined in an act with zawja. So you can't have them. So just like her ukht, like her sister, you can't marry both of them at the same time. Same thing, you can't marry her aunt at the same time that you're married to her. Mm. And of course, the reason behind this is because this will break up the family. This will create so many family problems. Mm. And so of course, the wife is supposed to be doing silat al-rahim. And she can't, how is she supposed to do silat al-rahim when this is like her, they call it darra, because this is like someone who she is hurt by, or that she has to share with. It's not something that is loved, by them instinctually. And so of course these would never be put together because of the harm that would have on the silat al-rahim. And also the وَيَحْرُمْ مِنَ الرَّضَاعِ مَا يَحْرُمْ مِنَ النَّسَبِ. And this is the last huge principle. I mentioned it before, but all of these things that were from the 7 that were previously mentioned, all of these, if they come into rada', then they are also going to be muharram. And this is similar to so you have rada', the man who got the woman pregnant that then lactated and created the milk. This man is the owner of this milk. They say it kind of like this way, sahib labanha. And so this man is going to be the father.
How?
Yeah. So this man is also the father, as well as so he's the father by rada. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay.
Because this milk didn't come about by nowhere.
Fine.
For the most part, this came by something, and so this man is also the father. So it's not just the woman that would be the mother, but also the man would be the father. So if this woman, she had, say this woman, she was nursing boys, then that father would, or the woman was nursing girls, let's say, yeah. And then that father would be their father
So
as well. Yeah, he'd be mahram for them. Yeah. And then also his ammatu, or ammuhu, and all the way up that goes all the way up that line as well. So that's also something to keep in mind. The father also plays a role in, there's a father of rada as well. So, of course, there's more in, the furu' in this particular masala. There's a ton of them, and we'll leave it for this for this book for here, because it goes out on 5 branches, especially anything that talks about families, because families get intricate and whatnot. So the next thing he's going to talk about, can you take back, or can you return the wife or the husband because of a deficiency or a defect. And so that's what he's going to talk about here. So he says here, وَتُرَدُّ الْمَرْأَةُ بِخَمْسَةِ عُيُوبٍ. And so he says you can take her back, if say you got married to a woman and she has one of these 5. He says khamsa, he doesn't mean all of them, he means any one of them. And so with any one of these 5, then this gives the person the right to return her and say, do fasq of the nikah. Like that, just like you can return a faulty good when you buy something and it's not as described, and there's something that's wrong with it, you return it right away. Same thing with if you had a wife at the same time. Of course, there's the mahr and everything, but you get that returned with this. And so he says, first bil junun. And so if the woman is insane, she's insane, or she has insane fits all the time, or that come up and about, then this is a reason for someone to return her. Of course, this is with him not agreeing to it from the get-go. But this is of the things that if she is insane. Of course, there's a level of insanity to every woman, but this is not what it's meant. Yeah. Go ahead.
So in Africa, especially for me, in my tribe or my family even, we have this kind of shayateen stuff that happen with women, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it happened for 30 minutes, 1 hour. They start talking, they lose their mind, right?
What?
Mm.
Shayateen mean jinn or?
Yeah. They manifest, right? So it happened. I mean, it's very common in my family specifically. So is that considered majnoon? It happened, and then she will come back to her senses after a while.
I would have to look into it a little bit more, but it from the way that they describe junun, it would fall into that category.
Yeah.
If this is something that repeats.
Yeah, it repeats all the time, every other week or every month.
And the same person that repeats.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's the junun. It's mutaqatta. They say one taqatta. Taqatta means it happens sometimes and it stops. Then it happens sometimes, it stops. It's still a deficiency. It's still something that,
So,
but of course, this is something that would give them the chance to do this. But if they accept it afterwards, then khalas. This is from the get-go. Almost done. And so then, and of course, look into individual fatwa for this. Get a fatwa on it. Don't use the dars that we're going over, but this is something that is according to the madhab, as we study, we study in books and we understand issues according to the way of the madhab, but then also there's some issues where you got to take it to an individual, for a faqih to actually say this is junun or this is not. There's someone to look at that and to give an actual fatwa if the person was actually looking for this way out.
Yeah, it's so common that we're not even worried about anymore. So yeah, seriously.
Allah musta'an. Assalamu alaikum. So the second one that he mentions here is judam, and this is a type of leprosy, which would be judam would be leprosy. Yeah. And so when they say when like some type of the body turns red, and then it turns black, and then it falls off, or like falls into pieces and whatnot, decays. Yeah, so this is of the things that would give someone the right to take their wife back, even if they found it for a long time, a while later, or they didn't realize it right away, and then they saw it was a issue from before. And also al-baras, which the way that they say this, baras, which is like they say it's like a whiteness that comes to the skin, that is like it gets rid of like the blood from it and whatnot. It's a sickness that has to do with the skin. And so, and of course, this would go back to the doctors and the professional. It would go back to the doctors and professionals to actually make the ruling on this. It's not something that you'd say, oh, you little white hair or something. No, but it's like an actual, if the doctors actually prove that this is an issue, then in that case you would go back to it. Alhamdulillah. Alright, so the next one that he goes through, also the junoon doesn't take a doctor to prove it. It doesn't take an actual doctor or like a medical professional to prove it, as opposed to these other two conditions. You need to actually have a doctor assess it. For the judam and for baras. Also the next one, he says the fourth one, warrataq. And rataq, the way that they'll say this is that the farj itself is closed. Maybe there's a small opening just for like something to come out, but it's closed and there's no like hope of jima'. And so this is what rataq is usually described as. And so of course this takes away like the meaning of someone getting married. It's like for this reason. And so of course, if they're not able to have this because of a physical problem, then in this case it takes away it gives them the right to take back their wife, or to get their money and the mahar back and whatnot, because this is a serious problem, like for someone to actually enjoy their wife, which is the meaning of marriage, or like one of the major points of it. And also like that even more ashad is like wal qaran. And al-qaran is, they will say that this is so the first one was insidar al-farj bi laham, and they say like that the farj was closed with like meat, like it's closed with meat. And then they say al-qaran is with bone. Allahu a'lam kayfa. But this is and this comes from there's a hadith that talks about this. I'm not sure of the sihhatu, like it's sihha, but this is of the things that would give the option to return that. And of course, this is something that stops. The meaning is clear. Like you're unable physically to have jima' with this person. Okay, then this is a reason to take it back. And so also the next thing, this is for the women, and so he's going to talk about for the men, and the men are similar in some ways. And so he says here, وَيُرَدُّ الرَّجُلُ بِخَمْسَةِ أُعْيُوبٍ. And so for the man, he's returned with 5, and he says here bil junun. So if the man is insane, then this is a reason for her to have fasq of the nikah, or to take it back and whatnot. So this is junun. And then the next one, wal judam, is of course like normally judam and like al-baras. These are things that if someone is going to be turned off, normally they'll be turned off by, if someone has this, there's going to be no sexual attraction between them. This is of the other meanings that they talk about, why these are like a thing that would take them off the table for nikah, or to give them the option to do fasq. And so also he says here, wal jab. And jab is that the actual thing is cut off.
What?
The actual thing is cut off.
Okay.
It's cut off. There's nothing there, like completely cut off. Some of them say a little bit is left, but not enough. But the actual dhakar is cut off.
He didn't tell that before.
And this is if it happened before or after, it's the same. Yeah. And also the next one is wal-unna. And unna is impotency.
Is what?
Impotency. He can't get it up. So this is the other one. And what the jab is not the same as like having testicles, not having testicles. That's a different thing. Not having testicles is that's a different issue. Yes, he can't have babies, but they can still technically have a sexual life, and that's not something that stops the sexuality, of course. But not having the actual thing is going to be, then she's not going to be able to have what she needs from a husband. So then al-unna, of course, there's certain conditions of when you take this into consideration. If from the get-go he was never able to get it up, then this is one thing. You'd go to like a qadi, you know, say he hasn't been able to get it up, and he'll give him a time to get it. And if he goes over a year and he still has never done it, then khalas, like this is not marriage, and she has the right to return him for that. But she has to go to a qadi right away. If there's an actual issue, and he tells the person to, like, that he has a timeline. If he doesn't do it, then she has the right to get rid of the marriage, you know, on this point. So these are of course, if it's just something that he actually consummated the marriage and then it comes in later, no. This is something from the get-go. It wasn't even happening. Because this can happen with people, and this is like it's an illness, but it's not it sometimes will happen and sometimes won't, you know. But if it's from the get-go of the marriage, from the very get-go, never consummated the marriage, wasn't able to, khalas. Like she goes to a hakim and then tells him, and she needs to tell him right away though, because he's going to set a timeline from that for a year, and if he doesn't do it in a year, then khalas, then the marriage will be fasq. But of course, she has she has to also make herself available and do everything that normally would be done for that. She can't be like saying this and she's not making herself available. So there's details to this as well. But in general, these are the 5 things that he mentions here that would give the option for that. Any questions before we move on? Sure. No question?
What if the wife say it's just small?
That's not aib. No, it's not aib. It's not aib that you would take it back from. And the same thing if it's too big. Same thing. And of course, if he's too big, that's not an aib for him to take back his wife either. Yeah.
So, could anything that you find like physically like very unappealing that you didn't know about before could be counted as something that's like extremely
like something, like some contagious skin disease?
It's very, very bad.
Allahu A'lam. So even if it's a different, you mean like a different disease, but the same meaning of like that it's destroying the skin and rotting it and it smells bad or something.
Very bad.
Yeah, if it was of the same meaning, then yeah, inshallah. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the mahr itself, and so this is of the things that is important for people to understand, and it's something that there has to be a mahr, and the mahr, there's certain ways that maybe someone talks about the mahr in the actual sigha, and maybe they don't talk about the mahr. So when they actually say that they married this person, they don't mention the mahr in the sigha. Or they do mention, the mahr that we agreed upon. You know, and then they actually mentioned it. So these are 2 different ways that they would be. And of course, if they agree upon something and they mention this in the actual sigha, or the aqd itself, the contract, then it is as they agreed upon. Of course, assuming that the conditions have been made for that. Like such as if like the marriage has to be on the mahr al-mithl, then it can't be anything less than this, or more of it in some circumstances. But if it's something that they agreed upon, like this is going to be it, and it's a little less than normal, but they agreed upon it, then it is as they said. But if they don't say anything, then we'll talk about this here. So we're going to talk about the mahr is also called as-sadaq. And so here the author here, rahimahullah, he says, وَيُسْتَحَبُّ تَسْمِيَةُ الْمَهْرِ فِي النِّكَاحِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يُسَمَّ صَحَّ الْعَقْدُ. So he says here, in yustahab, like it's mustahab for someone, tasmiyat al-mahr fi nikah, like the act. And so it's mustahab for someone to name the mahr when they're doing the actual act of nikah. They say for this mahr that we agreed upon, or they actually say it in the act, or they say the one that we agreed upon outside of it, and they know what they're talking about. So this is mustahab, and of course the reasons it's mustahab is because this is a way to cut out any differences of opinion, and no one's going to be fighting about anything because they know exactly what they're doing. As opposed to if he doesn't, he says if in lam yusamma sah al-aqd. So if the mahr is not stated in the act itself, the act is sahih. And then he says here wa wajib al-mahru. And so like the act is sahih and the mahr is also obligatory, and this would be the mahr al-mithl. So the women, and we'll talk about a little bit of the mahr al-mithl. He'll talk about this in a little bit, but this term will keep coming back, and it came, I believe we talked about it when we were talking about the Shujaa. We talked about someone was wanting to sell his give the mahr for a woman. We talked about in the Bab al-Shuf'a, we talked about if someone wants to do, he wants to take his share. So he owns something with a couple partners, and he wants to make his share, the mahr, for his wife. And so he makes it this mahr. Then this person would have to give the mahr al-mithl in return to it. This mahr al-mithl will keep coming back, inshallah, we'll talk about it. But it's someone like her would receive this in, someone of her status and whatnot, and of her family status and whatnot, would receive this amount of money. And this. So he says here, so if someone didn't say it, then the act is sahih, and this is with ijma'. And then the wajib al-mahr fi thalathati ashya', bi thalathati ashya'. And so he says the mahr becomes obligatory with three things, and like with any one of these three. And so he says, يَفْرِضَهُ الزَّوْجُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. So if the zawj, he says, I'm going to do this amount for the mahr, and he says, and he gives the amount that he's going to do. In this case, when he gives that amount on it for himself to do this before dukhul, then in this case, this is what this is obligatory on him to give this to her, of course, as he said it for himself. And then also وَيَفْرِضَهُ الْحَاكِمُ. And also for the hakim to do this. So say like he didn't want to say how much the mahr was going to be, then the hakim would come into it and he would do the mahr al-mithl. So he would basically find the mahr al-mithl, and he would get this. And how do you get the mahr al-mithl? You look at the first thing that you look at is at the family itself. What did the sisters of this girl from her, like her father's, like the sisters from her father, what did they have? Like what did they have as a mahr? And if like similar, and they're similar, say they're similar in beauty and status and whatnot, and ilm, and all of the things that would normally change from one person to another, if they're all the same, then it'd be like their sisters. And if we don't have sisters, then we go to the next of like the closest of kin from the fathers, like the asabat. We go from the asabat, and then we would take one of the daughters from the asabat and look at that. Because this is where we're looking at nasab. Because nasab is one of the biggest things that this is the whole, like the whole thing is pointed around nasab. When they talk about mithl, all of it, they go back to the nasab, and then they go off of the closest of kin from the nasab. And then and there's other things that they'll take into consideration as well. But in general, this is what they will look at. So once they get like her sister got this much, and she's just like her, and all of the same ways, she's just as beautiful, she has just the same amount of ilm and whatnot, there's and all the same like things that they have, they are shared in, so she would have like the same as her sister in this case. And so the hakim would get this for, so if this man didn't say how much it was going to be, he would make sure that this person has to pay this, just like the other person, and he would find that and not exceed it and not go under it. The hakim, that's his job, to figure out what that is and to do his ijtihad in that. And so, or the last of the three things that would make it obligatory, an yadkhula biha fatajibu mahr al-mithl. So say he entered upon her, like then he has to give her the mahr al-mithl. If he didn't, like say he didn't say how much he was going to pay her for mahr, and the hakim didn't say how much he was going to have to pay beforehand. And of course, before he actually does the mahr, she has the right to prevent herself from him, like prevent her from having like jima' and whatnot, to prevent herself and to say not until you pay. Like that's her right. So if she does this, then the hakim would come in and say this is how much you have to pay. And so that's her right beforehand.
I mean, if she done nikah, but she didn't get her
The act has been done, but he hasn't ad-dukhul biha, no dukhul. So if he hasn't paid the mahr, and they haven't agreed upon that part of it is going to be delayed. If they didn't agree that it's going to be delayed, then in this case she has no right. If she agreed that it's going to be delayed, then she has no right to stop. In this case, if she agreed that it's going to be delayed, but if she said that this is what it needs to be, and then she has the right to stop. But if she gives in at any point in time, then khalas, like he has to pay, but she can't stop herself afterwards. But for the first time, she has the right to make sure that her mahr has been paid to her if she agreed that it was going to be paid outright. Yeah. And the same thing, she goes to Hakim, and the Hakim if he didn't say how much it was going to be, she goes to Hakim and says, get it, and make sure he gets it to me now. And if not, then she has the right to stop herself from that. All right, and so, and also the next thing he says here is وَلَيْسَ لِأَقَلِّ الصَّدَاقِ وَلَا لِأَكْثَرِهِ حَدٌّ. So he says, and there's not something for the smallest amount of sadaq, like for the mahr. There's no smallest amount. It just needs to be something that's considered mutamawwal, like that. It's not like, as we talked about when we're buying and selling, we can't sell two things of 2 grains of like corn or something, or 2 grains of oats, like of rice. This you don't pay money for this. But the smallest amount of something that you would pay money, then this is something that that's like the smallest amount. And if they agreed to it, beforehand, okay, then this is what they agreed to. Even if it's manfa, like even if this person said, I'm gonna teach you something or another. Say I'm gonna teach you al-Baqarah, and so this is what he has to pay her. He has to teach her al-Baqarah. Or if he wants to teach her math or something, a certain defined set, he can do this as well. And if they agree upon it, so there's nothing that is the smallest amount that is like that is set, that can't be less, and there's no limit to the most of it. So if they agreed to something ridiculous, and they agreed to it, khalas, then there's no limit to how ridiculous this is. Of course, some of the this is not an area of agreement with the fuqaha, so it's best not to go into like extremes, because many of the fuqaha would say no, you can't do over what is normal for like a ridiculous way. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And of course, the Shafi'i view is that there's no limit to the smallest or the biggest. Yeah. He says, وَيَجُوزُ أَن يَتَزَوَّجَهَا عَلَى مَنْفَعَةٍ مَعْلُومَةٍ. This is why I mentioned here that it's permissible for him to marry her in ala, which right here is like for the price of a manfa, which is like a benefit, ma'luma, that is known. So maybe a person says, I'm going to take you on hajj, or he says, I'm going to pay for your hajj. You say, I'm going to pay for your hajj. You know, whether that hajj, like this is a manfa that's known, like a hajj package. You're gonna get a hajj package for your marriage, and this is my sadaq, and so this is permissible. Yeah. And so, or anything that is known, like a job or something, as I mentioned, teaching a certain thing. This is known, and of course there's a hadith of that. That the Prophet ﷺ married someone for him to teach what he knew, what was with him for the Quran, to teach her what he knew from the Quran, as the mahr itself. And of course a basic principle that we always need to keep in mind is like you shouldn't go against the adat of people. Like going against the adat of people sometimes is not good, and also sometimes the adat can be hard from one culture to another, and so it's like there's a balance between this. Sometimes men want to come into a culture and throw away all of it and pick up a couple of the sahabis as examples, you know, but you're coming into a culture, you know, and like you got to respect the culture that you're coming into. So some people like without khataman, and so they're like, even if it was like a steel ring, like, you know, why don't you marry your daughter to me? Allah understand. As we met. So there's definitely reasons why, like this is going off topic, but there's reasons why some of the cultures have what they have, because some of it is like a way to discourage people from doing talaq. Some of the reasons that people are set up, because I've heard some of the stories of people, like Western people will come into a community and marry their daughters, get them pregnant, have fun, and do talaq right away and leave. And he just paid like a little bit or whatever, and it was nothing. And he just basically having fun with them. And of course, he ruined this woman's life. So of course, there's a reason why they put preventative measures before doing this, so that it hurts. If you're going to just come in and do this, it'll hurt. Yeah, so there's definitely reasons behind some of this, and you got to take into considerations the adat of people and not go against them too much, because that will definitely create other issues. That's just advice. And so then also he mentions here, وَيَسْكُتُ بِالطَّلَاقِ قَبْلَ الدُّخُولِ نِصْفُ الْمَهْرِ. So here, if someone agreed to a mahr, they did the act, but he didn't enter in upon her, فَنِصْفُ مَا ذَرَتُمْ. And so this is, so if a person, he got married, something bad went down, he never consummated the marriage, but he did agree to a certain amount, and maybe he gave it to her, then this is half of this, he leaves it with her. For her, she's now a mutallaqa. Like she's now gone into, and she's had talaq done on her, and she's been left. Even if she's still a bikr, she's still a mutallaqa. And so because of this, all of this pain and turmoil and whatnot, then she gets, her right is half. And it's sad. Sometimes people don't realize this, and you'll see this with, like I've heard about it in the Egyptian culture, where people do terrible things. They'll take everything from her. They'll leave her with nothing, and khalas. Because they're men, they do what they want. And of course they should fear Allah in this, because half, if the act has done, and you set aside a certain amount for the mahr, half of this is for her. And say you got her clothes as a part of the mahr, then of course you would take half of this back, or the qima, or at least the qima of this, and whatnot. But this is something that's very important that people fear a lot in regards to taking the rights of the ibad. This is a very serious matter. And so like if they did this before the actual entering in, then it's half. And if she wants to forgive the other half, that's up to her. So this is the way that we, when we talk about this ayah and أو يعفو الذي بيده عقدة النكاح. So this is, she has a right with her half side. So she أو يعفون, this is the women. If they are musamah, like if they forgive, then they can give their right back. But the person بيده عقدة النكاح, this is the zawj. So if he wants to forgive from his side, then he gives the other half that is his right, he leaves it with her, so she has all of it. Does this make sense? So he leaves all of the mahr with her, and this is the way that the Shafi'is take this tafsir, بيده عقدة النكاح, because there's a big difference upon who is this. Some say it's the wali of the woman, and some of them say no, it's the actual man, because he's the one that is the only one that actually does anything in nikah. Like after nikah has happened, he's the only one that has the act. And this is how they'll look at it. The Shafi'is, they have strength in this. So, but he has half. So if he wants to forgive his half, that is his right, he wants to forgive and leave it with her, so she has everything, that's fine. But it's his right to take back half of it if he did talaq and whatnot. But he can't take all of it. By no state and circumstance does he have a right to all of the mahr. Once he's done the act and he's actually given the mahr there, and he's actually stipulated it. Say he didn't stipulate it, and in this case, if he didn't stipulate it, the act, he never gave anything, then he needs to give her something. فَمَتِّعُوهُنَّ. And so you're supposed to give her something that and give her some gift. Something, a lot of times it shouldn't be less than, they say, arba'in and dirahim, like just to get out of the khuruj min al-khilaf. It's like not exactly for sure, but it's a certain amount of money that they should give, so that as a gift. And this is if they haven't given anything in particular, they haven't agreed upon a certain price, and he never gave anything, but then he did talaq, so he should give her something. And of course, all of this is without any wat, wat or jima'. If he has consummated the marriage, khalas, all of it is hers. Nothing, no going back on any of it. You can't go back on this once there's actually been consummation. Then there's no going back on any of this. Not allowed to take any of this. And also, just like this meaning, say the woman makes him nuts. So he wants to divorce her. But we'll talk about it later, that there's something called al-khula', which is basically she asks for divorce and in replication for mal, or like for money. So she says, and divorce me for this amount of money and I'll pay. And so this is, sometimes the men, if they're oppressive and whatnot, they will be mean to this woman and just drive her insane until she asks for khula, so that they can get money back from her. And this is totally haram bil ijma', and it's of the kaba'ir.
Instead of paying her.
Because this is basically you're driving her insane and being mean to her and being upset to her, just so you can get money from her. In the same meaning, it's still haram. فَلْيَتَّقِ So and this is of the other meanings. And this comes in like when people look into the first 3 pages or 4 pages of Surah An-Nisa. Of course, someone who's studying fiqh, of course, they'll need to study Surah Al-Baqarah and also up to Surah An-Nisa and Ma'idah, and study the ahkam, just the ahkam itself. And you'll find that there's a lot of benefits within these, and also memorizing this. But this is of the huge meanings. And also one of the things that is beautiful in the Quran is you will find that the Quran doesn't just give rulings, but it gives wisdoms behind it and wa'adh. And also fear, and shows the extreme nature of if someone was to go against this thing. Like we say, this is haram, this is makruh, but in the Quran you'll see that this is accompanied by the strongest of language. When someone wants to do it this way or this way, this is something that is accompanied with the strongest of language, and it's a reminder for us. And so this is also important that people look into the ayat and ponder them as well. So, and also he says here, at the end of this, he says, وَالْوَلِيمَةُ عَلَى الْأُرْسِ مُسْتَحَبَّةٌ. Al-walima, it basically means getting people together. In general, this is linguistically, it means getting ijtima' ala ta'am or something of this sort. So getting people together to eat. And so you can have a walima for all kinds of different things. People talk about the different things that someone can have a walima for, such as finishing a kitab. If we finish this book, maybe we have a walima. It's something, any occasion. But when it's used without any other terms, without any context, it would be the walima of zawaj, or they would say walimatul urs. And this would normally happen. He says here, وَالْوَلِيمَةُ عَلَى الْأُرْسِ مُسْتَحَبَّةٌ. So this is something that is mustahab. And the time that normally would be done is after dukhul. After dukhul, this is the time that the sunnah to do it. You can do it beforehand, after the act, and you want to do the walima beforehand, no problem with that. But the sunnah is to have it after the actual dukhul happened. And then, of course, for someone who's able to actually a dhabh of a shah, say a sheep, and then they feed the sheep to their friends and neighbors and whatnot, then this is something that is mustahab for someone to do that. And also the next thing goes in here, and it says, وَالْإِجَابَةُ إِلَيْهَا وَاجِبَةٌ إِلَّا لِعُذْرٍ. And so if you're ever invited to the walima, and this says, he says it's wajibah to respond to it and go, except for udhr. And he's going to mention of the udhr, and there's a lot of this, and there's conditions for this. Of the udhr, I'll mention some of these that Al-Khatib al-Shirbini mentions in Al-Iqna'. He mentions that the da'i, the person that's calling you, is Muslim. That's one of it. He needs to be Muslim. Also that the person that's being called is also Muslim. So that you're going to, or that person is being called, he's Muslim as well. And also the person that is being called on the first day of the walima. Because occasionally people will wait until the last day for the walima, and they will want to use the first day for the special important people, and they ask the people later down the line for the next couple days, if they're doing a big occasion. And so everyone should be equal in this. So if you're going to wait and to ask on the second or third day after you've already had the VIPs come in, then there's no obligation to go and for that. And also that there's no and that the person has the right to use the money that they're using for the walima. So say this person stole the money that they're using, or that they're stealing, or that their money is haram. In this case, if you're pretty sure that their money is haram, then you wouldn't have to go, because that money that they're feeding is from haram. So you wouldn't have to go there. Also that they're not doing something haram there, such as music, dancing, free mixing, these things, all of it's haram. You don't have to go to those. And actually, it could be haram to go there unless the presence of this person is going to stop them from doing haram. Say this person has a big weight and influence in society. If he went in there and said, turn it off, they would all turn it off. And in this case, it would be obligatory for him to go and say, turn it off, and also go. But also the person, it actually asks him for himself, and he asks the person individually. So if he just sends out flyers in general to everybody, just go to all the doors, no, it's not obligatory. But if he goes to an individual and says come, and then he's going to that one person with himself and he's saying to do this, then he would go. And there's other conditions as well. I mentioned pretty much the most important ones are. And also that the people there aren't terrible people. So like if that person it's not befitting for him to go sit with these type of people that are there, he doesn't go. He doesn't have to go sit with, let's say like they're a bunch of scumbags that he's gonna have to go sit with. He's not obliged to go sit with someone who's not it's not appropriate for him or someone of his status to go sit with them. Inshallah. And we'll call it for today, inshallah. And this is the next thing we'll go into like some of the rights of the actual of the wife, and if there's multiple wives, to break them, like to break up their days and whatnot, make sure that they're all treated equally in that way, and also some of the other things that come into the marriage. And of course, we went over the happy parts of marriage, and then the last parts of the next parts of the Kitab Nikah, we'll go over like the more difficult parts. But of course, it's important that we know them, especially when it comes to talaq. It's very important that someone knows what is a proper talaq, what is haram, and when is it permissible. And all of this stuff, there's supreme wisdom behind when it's permissible and when it's not permissible, and in these things. And I ask Allah to give us a knowledge of the deen and action with that. And sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. You guys have any questions before we go?
I have a question. You know about marriage in Egypt, the urfa.
Yeah.
I was talking to my teacher. He said that, for example, if you say talaq one time, then the marriage is over. If you say أنت مطلق.
We'll talk about this, but she would go into iddah.
Yeah,
if it's just one.
Iddah, but she's at that time. Say, for example,
she's mutallaqa raj'iyya,
yeah.
which means until she finishes the iddah, you can take her back at any time.
But I heard in the urf in Egypt is if you said it one time, two times, or three times, it doesn't count before you go to a hakim because of the urf. Would that go?
I'm not going to give fatwa here, but no.
Would that go under to respect the culture?
No, the hakim that goes against the shariah. لا يعتبر ما يخالف الشرع صراحة وبلا خلاف. لا يشترط إذن الحاكم في إنجاز الطلاق.
I don't know if it's.
Allah musta'an. They try to do this because they think it's gonna save families,
Yeah,
but it doesn't. It doesn't say. And going against the Sharia in something that's clear. Like Allah musta'an. The talaq happens from the time it's said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Allah musta'an.